Welcome to the session. Again, my name is Steve Mayotte, CEO of Payamatic. The contact information to reach me after this presentation is in the bottom right-hand corner. Any of those channels works just fine. And welcome to the session, which is how Payamatic transforms digital or data insights into personalized customer experiences using Braze and Snowflake. Okay, a little bit of background about Payamatic I think is important. You have a picture of one of our shiny stores in Manhattan. Actually, that one is on the right-hand side. We operate about 140 retail locations focused on the underserved segment of the population, providing what is called alternative financial services. So just really quickly, what is that to give some context? It's check cashing, cross-border remittances with Western Union. We have what's called a general purpose reloadable prepaid card. Think of it as a sort of pseudo bank account type card. We do bill payment. We do quite a number of other services that are tailored specifically to the New York market. So think of it just as a transactionally oriented business for the underserved segment. And very cash-based customers. So we do about 1.5 million, we have about 1.5 million active customers and process around 20 million transactions annually. So no different than anyone else, and I'm sure the themes that you're hearing in other presentations. There's a change in customer behavior. The marketplace is changing. Fintech is everywhere, right? Innovation is everywhere. We fully recognize that our traditional brick and mortar business needs to be modernized and sort of brought into the 21st century to engage with our customers in the way they want to. So we started our digital transformation journey about 3 years ago, launched a set of new mobile assets, as well as some more modern web assets, and heavily, which we'll talk about in this, really spent a lot of time building a first best-in-class sort of modern data stack. And the whole objective was really all around enabling a personalized experience with our customer. And the way we like to think of it is the customer walks into the store, talks to our CSR, you'd be amazed. It's sort of like, the olden days at the banks, right? Where there's a relationship there. The same people come to the same stores. We really wanted to make sure that we could personalize the same way they get that service relationship from a CS customer service rep, that we could do the same thing in our digital ecosystem as well. So some challenges and requirements as we really thought about how we were going to personalize and create our data stack for the future. So challenges, look, in our environment, it's really not too dissimilar to more of a traditional retailer where tracking can be kind of difficult, right? You don't have an existing account with us in all situations. We sometimes know who you are, we sometimes don't. It really just depends on regulatory. So that is a challenge. So we really had to think about how can we keep track of the customer in an obtrusive way across all these challenges as they have relationship with us that may start in a store, then may transition to usage of a card and mobile world. And then we may be trying to get them to engage further with us or take the next step in the product life cycle or their journey, by re-engaging with them using other channels and other means. So that was really important to us. We really had to think about that. We're in a heavily regulated environment, financial services. We're regulated by New York State Department of Financial Services, as well as we have payment card data, and we hold customers' PII. So we really had to think about security, and we always do, just as anyone else would. Not dissimilar to, I'm assuming most people, we had aging infrastructure. Our data warehouse was built in SQL Server, and it really just wouldn't scale to the event type data that we were moving towards, and especially when you're looking at some semi-structured data in there. And our tools as well for BI and ETL weren't scaling either. So we thought about, those are some of the challenges, and then we thought about the requirements. What do we need in a solution? So the key here was we really wanted to increase our cross-channel communication with the customers in a digital sense. So what does that mean? Not just your traditional emails, push notifications, using SMS where it makes sense, personalizing their feed inside the app when it makes sense, and just sort of using everything that's available to us to re-engage that customer. We really wanted to make that a first-class, so part of our solution. Increasing conversions. This is, increasing LTV is really the ultimate objective on the customer relationship, but there are key conversion events. We wanted something that would allow us to help automate and make it easier to move customers along the journey, all depending on where each customer is in their journey. We also knew we needed a 360-degree view of the customer. What that basically means for us is get absolutely everything we can about touch points that happen outside of our store, as well as inside of our store, into one central data warehouse for analysis. So, think the card is a great example. A person comes into the store, purchases a card, and then after they purchase the card, they get a card in the mail. They may get a personalized card in the mail. They activate it. They may reload it somewhere else. They may use it at a point of sale somewhere else, right? So they may call customer service. They use the mobile app, right? All of those touch points, we have data feeds back about that customer's engagement and interactions, and we really want to have that all in one place so we could really optimize our personalized campaigns moving forward. And SQL, at the end of the day, our analysts and the marketing team were very comfortable with SQL, so we had to make sure whatever solution could, continue to work with SQL. So here's our stack, and I don't want to go too deep into all the tooling here, but I think it's important to provide the context. This is the solution that we ended up going with, and again, the objective here is all these tools sort of fit together in a modern cloud data stack to really help enable and help us iterate and move much faster in the personalization, and as well as the analysis, test, learn, adapt, and the customer engagement portion of our sort of objectives here. So first off, and I think this is really important, we have a mixture of online transactional systems, some of older ages, some are much more modern. We really wanted to focus, and we built a microservice tier that allowed for each system to have the context of the customer. Now, what that really just means in a simple form is if you are in the store and then you're in the mobile app and then you're using the card on the payment networks, in the systems that are processing that, we're keeping track of you sort of as one customer, even though you may be in the related system in a specific, have your own ID in those systems. And that's important. So that's happening upstream before the feeds are going down to the warehouse. And that really, really, really helps with making it easier for analysis later on. We knew we use AWS, so we're actually fully in AWS at this point for all of our hosting. So we really wanted the solution or our set of tools to work in AWS. And we wanted to use SaaS partners wherever we possibly could, and even on AWS using managed, the platform as service type offerings. Really trying to just turnkey, let someone else manage the infrastructure, let us start to work on getting insights and delivering business value as quickly as possible. So the areas we're going to focus on, as we kind of move through the presentation are specifically the partnership with Braze and the partnership with Snowflake. But I think really quickly, just to talk about each of the portions here of, at least each of the key partners, starting right at the top, right? Fivetran really helps us, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, with what is called ELT. So they can take data right out of our online systems or from third-party APIs, and with a few clicks, synchronize that in whatever cadence we want into Snowflake, so it's immediately available for us. That is a huge deal. It saves our engineers a lot of time from writing integration and makes the data immediately available. Braze also, not only do they have an ability to, which we'll talk about in the next slide, an ability to instrument all the apps and launch all this great marketing campaign, but they also use data sharing, which makes their data or our data that's in their platform immediately available the next day for analysis in Snowflake. That is very powerful. Again, the key there is we're not spending time writing ETL. We're working on gaining insights with the data as quickly as possible, making it available in Snowflake. A couple other just points to highlight. Airflow we use for scheduling. DBT we're using to help with some of the transformation and really making it easier to track what the heck is going on and what we're building in our Snowflake instance. And then downstream, Looker we use for our business intelligence, and data scientists are using Jupyter and you see stuff on the bottom right hand corner, Python, Spark, SageMaker, depending on the situation of what they're doing. So as we move on to the next slide, and we're going to kind of focus in on the two partners that are key to helping us provide personalization, and it's Snowflake and Braze. So why Snowflake, right? This might be a very simple question. Probably have heard the name. It's been, I would say, fairly buzzed lately. Look, the big thing is decoupling of compute and storage. You can go to look at, when we did, you can look at GCP's offering, BigQuery, you can look at AWS's offering. And when we really looked at everything, we said, okay, we liked Snowflake because it decoupled the compute and the storage, right, which allowed us to sort of scale as we needed to per workload, which is very powerful. We like the consumption-based pricing, and what we found, and I will still remember this from the first time we used it. We threw a bunch of our data in there, some couple 100 million record tables, right? Some transactional history, and used the same exact queries that we were running on SQL Server, and immediately exponentially better performance, right? So that was just a great, gave us good confidence that we could use Snowflake. It would be a platform for us for the future. Now, why Braze? Braze is sort of a more modern class of customer engagement solutions, and their integration is really easy. So our existing assets, we had a mobile app, websites, in store, offline feeds, right? So we were able to use a combination of their SDKs for each of those, as well as their API to kind of push events and really track and sort of almost everything the customer is doing is there's an event pushed to Braze behind the scenes, which allows for marketing automation to kick off there. With that, Braze has a great open, flexible data model. You really, really have to think about how you're going to structure your data to get the most out of Braze when you're running your campaigns. So that was definitely something that we thought long and hard about, but we really liked how flexible that model was. They have a tool called Canvas, which is basically an automation tool. So, just to use an example, and we're going to go on one, end to end, sort of the next slide. But a customer walks into our store and purchases the Empower card, which is our general purpose reloadable card. There's a life cycle of this, right? So from the purchase to reloading the card is a very valuable event. Another valuable event is linking to the mobile app. Another valuable event is enrolling a direct deposit, right? So what we can do is every customer that purchases the card goes into what's called a canvas. Think of it as an automation tooling within Braze. And then from there, based on where you are in your journey, we can wait some amount of days and then remind you to reload the card or ask you to enroll in direct deposit if you haven't. And we can have all of that automation triggered by Braze, relevant to where you are in your journey for that product. And that's really incredibly powerful for us. We really, really were impressed with that feature, and we really liked the roadmap, but we just sort of believed and agreed with the direction that Braze was heading. It felt very sympathetic to the direction that we were heading with everything. And then finally, data sharing. So the combination of, and this is an important point, right? Spending less time on saying, hey, can I go get the output of what happened? And then I have to, our engineers have to bring that data in to make it available for analysts and the like. This really allows, or this solution is provided by Snowflake, and what Braze does is basically publishes to a set of data tables, views, all of our data from the previous day the next morning, and it's immediately able for us to query, right? So that's very powerful, and it just takes the time away from the how do we get the data into the system to work, and just focusing more of our time on how do we make it actionable decisions using the data. So just real quick on our sort of cycle and where we went after having everything in one place, right? We did the classic test, learn, adapt model. We really focused on identifying the key moments in the customer journey, designing campaigns to increase conversions at those key moments in time. And we're going to show you one on the next slide. It's just an example. Testing different channels and cadence and delivery cadence, I think, is a very important point. Everyone is a little different, and Braze has some tooling that allows us to understand when people are reacting at opening events, and then sort of deliver the message around the type of time that they're opening the event. Right, the last thing we want to do is send an email at 2:00 in the morning. Right, it's probably not going to get opened. But if we can see that people are interacting with our emails, just to use an example, or our push notifications at maybe out when they're riding the subway home, or maybe in the morning when they're on the train into the office, right? That's one of their more active times. We can leverage, Braze can learn that, right, by our opening data, and then deliver that message at that moment in time, or very close to that moment in time. It really helps with increasing our open rates. So playing around with all of that, cadence and message and channel is really a lot of just test, learn, and adapt and continue, but can be very powerful for increasing conversion rates. We talked about the example quickly about the canvas, but that intelligent delivery is very, very powerful. I think it's important for measuring and reacting to where what you're learning. And that's the key, one of the keys to the stack. And that's why it's very powerful to have the data available the next day, right? That ELT approach or using data sharing with Braze, we're minimizing the time it takes us to gain insights about the outcomes for measurement so we can turn and react and iterate quicker. That was a key thing that we've learned here. So just give you an example, and this is a cross-channel campaign specifically. So I use the example of our Empower card, which is our general purpose card. It's sold in store. What we learned through analysis of customer behavior using that 360-degree view of the customer in our warehouse was really, hey, after 10 days of what we'll call inactivity of a reload, so they have not reloaded the card after they initially purchased it and put money on it, their chances for churn are up a lot higher. So this is an example of a campaign where at that day 10, right, from the analysis that we learned, you're sending the customer at whatever channel they want, one showing you text and one showing you push notification, a reminder to reload your card and a coupon code potentially to incentivize them. And everything's got deep links into the mobile app, and then sort of that's showing you on the bottom right hand side just some other examples of, the right hand side, some other examples of types of campaigns running. But that sort of enablement and cross channel capability to connect everything and re-engage with our customers. This is sort of a good example of that type of campaign in action that we can do with Braze. So as you kind of get a little more mature, right, and we go, we focus kind of on these sort of 3 areas of deeper analysis, and I think it's important to just highlight them. Targeting the customers, which is in segmenting and identifying their needs, is sort of just the continuous turn. But as we moved into the more mature use cases, and we're still very, we're learning on this. We're by no means incredibly advanced, but we continue to iterate. We've used some of the tooling on AWS to start to look, machine learning tooling, to start to look at churn analysis and clustering, which is another way of doing segmentation, recommendation problems, which are basically, hey, we see customers that come into the stores purchasing X. Should we recommend them? And we have capabilities in our point of sale systems to incent our customer service representatives for the cross sell or the upsell, right? So targeting those customers that may have a higher chance based on the correlated type behavior to purchase another type of product from us. So those type of things are some of the machine learning use cases. And when all your data is in one place, right, it makes other business optimization problems easier to solve as well. So the demand forecast and like what are we expecting for sales in a per store hour or per store per hour for the next 7 days, for example. Well, that solution, as we look at using forecasting machine learning type models, also can help us with better optimizing customer service representatives, so staffing in the stores. It can also help us better optimize inventory. What are we carrying for cash in the stores? So what we kind of started to find is as everything was put in one place, there were a lot of other benefits just outside of looking at our customers and trying to create better experiences for them. So here's some results just to give you a sense. We had a 32% uplift in direct deposit adoption via the mobile app. This is just a specific campaign that we were looking at, but that's going to help increase lifetime value for us. What we can see over a longer period of time is that we have double the revenue or double lifetime value for an engaged customer, which is someone that we call has really taken one of these steps. So as we sent them messages, engaged with us versus non-engaged, we basically will make twice as much money off of an engaged customer versus a non-engaged. We had an 11% increase in mobile app engagements, which was excellent. And we were able to push the penetration of our mobile app up in our prepaid card as well. So quickly, as running out of time, the lessons learned, and I think it's important to really be honest in where you are in customer journey, on sort of maturing your customer journey. I remember the first time we sort of laid this all out. We went in a room, looked at a whiteboard, and just wrote out the entire customer journey. And you'd be amazed how complicated it is. And what we really did was we focused on, okay, where are these friction points? Where are these points if we could gain conversions to cross for example, the direct deposit enrollment. It would enable much higher lifetime value. So, but you really have to think about where are you in your capabilities, and it's, crawl, walk, run, sprint. And I think that was something we definitely learned. Start small, think about everything, and kind of progress. The point of centralizing your data, I think, is a really important point. Look, the time it takes to do analysis is really can be dramatically reduced in the time by centralizing everything and really focusing on that build up front, and then leveraging tools like Snowflake to to make analysis much easier and very scalable. And then I think the last point that we really learned is we used to spend, in our on-premise solution prior to our full migration to Snowflake, really spent an enormous amount of time on preparing data, grabbing it from other systems, loading it in, and then making it available. And by using tools like Fivetran or data sharing in this situation, the example with our partnership with Braze and Snowflake, we were really able to just remove that portion of work, which quickly gets us to a point where we're able to spend our engineering time, rather than on the integration type work, much more on how do we deliver business value, like what can we add on top of what we have to create more value. So I think those are sort of some of the key lessons learned. And with that, I will finish up. Are there any questions?
Hey, Steve, I'm sure there's loads of questions going to be coming in. I've got a few here that I'm going to mention as well. But as you said at the beginning of the presentation, you gave your contact details. And just to remind everybody that you can actually contact Steve directly through the event app as well. So by now, you should all be using that, because it allows you to network with all of the speakers today and all of the attendees around the world as well. So make sure you interact with Steve through the app, and he can ask you answer any of your questions. But a few I've got, Steve, to kick off. If an organization has an existing data warehouse, how can they get started with Snowflake?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I remember the first day when we kind of looked at everything, I said, my goodness, we have all this legacy workloads. We build process around this. We do analysis. How are we going to start enabling Snowflake, right? So this is where Fivetran was incredibly valuable for us, because what we started off doing was basically taking our current data warehouse and replicating it using Fivetran up to Snowflake. So we didn't focus on doing any transformations in Snowflake to start with. We just said, let's just get the data in there. And when we got the data in there, then we started to say, okay, now how can we start to move analysis there, right? So you're focusing on, as quickly as possible, the part of insights and deriving value from your data. So I think that was something that we became very apparent was the best path for us. And then from there, you gradually break pieces up little by little and move it. And that's how you kind of get there.
Okay, that makes sense. And can you explain why you shifted from ETL to ELT?
Sure. And I think that it's all about value, right? And how do you want to spend your data engineering time? We were spending, and it's hard to put a specific percentage on it, but we were spending a lot of that team's time on preparing data, and it just didn't feel like we were spending enough time on, after the data's in there, how do we continue to iterate and provide insights to the business off of that data, right? So the whole migration to ELT with Fivetran / data sharing and a couple other kind of capabilities in there really allowed us to shift that time and redeploy those resources into something that was helping to provide more value.
Okay. And we've got time for one more question. So Steve, one tip for brands that they can start doing today to improve customer engagement.
Sure. Look, I think it's on that lessons learned slide. It's all about focus on, to use a baseball analogy. I'm in the United States, so hit singles, right? Start small, crawl, walk, run. You don't it took us years to build everything that we just sort of talked about, right? It's not an overnight exercise. But what you can do by locking yourselves in a room and drawing the customer journey, right, across a whiteboard, you can identify areas where there is opportunity. And then you can say, okay, look, for instance, I'll use the direct deposit example. If we could convert N number of more customers, it would be worth X more dollars in lifetime value, right? And then so you can focus in there and you can say, okay, what do we have available to us right now that we can work with to drive that outcome? And I think that that's really, really important. And just being honest about what you have and clearly painting a vision and looking at where you want to get to in the future. But it's how do you start hitting singles today, and how do you add up a single, add up a single, add up a single, and you're scoring runs. And then while you're doing that, continue to move towards your future endpoint that you want to get to.
Okay, so it's all about picking up the singles rather than trying to hit the home run straight away.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's as far as my baseball knowledge goes. Okay, I think that's the perfect way to end it. So, so Steve from Paymatic, thanks very much for today's session.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the conference, everybody.